we are on the Ultimate Sports Network talking about real boxing talk on the Real Boxing Talk show. One of our other shows at one point, 2 years ago, whatever it was, Dave's going to add some expertise and wisdom to something we saw this weekend. So welcome, everybody.
Hey, hello.
All right, let's get into this real quick. It's something that we really neglected because we really wanted to neglect it, but it seems like it's something that we're going to have to deal with now. The Mike Tyson, Roy Jones Jr. fight, how it played out, and the aftermath of what's going to happen from that, because this isn't going away, folks. You know, as much as we think it's going to, it's not going away. You've got 6 or 7 other people already talking about, I want to fight Joe Louis. You know, it's getting crazy. So, Dave, first of all, why don't you give us a quick breakdown of what you thought of the fight or the exhibition or whatever it was, and we'll kind of roll from there.
My perspective is, I was trained as a black belt in Kung Fu, but a lot of Krav Maga. So my teacher was actually a very, very prominent counter fighter. So he passed on a lot of those types of skill sets to me as I was training. So I guess when I watch an MMA fight now or go back and watch fights from the 80s and 90s, I have a completely different perspective than I did back then. As far as this fight, I went back and watched most all of Tyson's fights. Now, I think his first 20, even I could probably beat half of them. A lot of them were bums, but that does not mean they were bad fighters whatsoever. I don't want to get in the ring with him at 54. But as a perspective of somebody that is 6'4" and would be in the heavyweight division, I've always struggled against guys that were in the 5'9", 5'10" range, because the shorter boxer always prevails with uppercuts or hooks. They're just built for it. And, you know, if it really takes the fighter that's shorter, and if your arms are down at an angle punching down at somebody, really your arms are about the same length. That's why people blade their body like Roy Jones did when he was throwing his jabs. He was getting that extra length on top of his arms being 4 inches longer than Tyson's. But even at this point in his life, Mike's reciprocating energy on his torso is still very powerful. It's not near as quick. Early 90s speed with his reciprocating energy, he could do a full power punch from here. And if you ever notice that Mike Tyson's best punches sometimes never went more than 3 or 4 inches. He could just go and explode. You couldn't hit him because he was short. He was covered up, and then he would just blast you in the liver, which is no fun. I've had that done before. That'll drop you. But as the way I looked at the fight, Roy Jones was in a small ring against a guy that hits as hard as anybody ever has, and did the smartest thing you could ever do: tie him up, keep range. But, you know, both those fighters are very good at dictating range. Now, Roy Jones, early in his career, he was just too fast. He could dictate range because his arms were long for his weight division. And then he had that strong, quick left hook that would just pop you in the chin. Mike Tyson dictated range, but mostly from a crouching position as a peekaboo fighter. So see the contrasting styles together was really kind of surreal. But people say that Roy Jones lost the fight, but man, you don't want to go in there toe to toe against that guy.
Right.
Those guys are in their 50s. They can't pick up the body language of somebody and what they're going to throw. And that's one of the things that Mike Tyson did. He was so short and compact that you couldn't pick up on the body cues by watching somebody's feet to know which punch they can throw or which one punch they can't throw. He would just – so I thought it was a very entertaining exhibition. It was more like a sparring match. Neither fighter threw too many punches, too powerful. When you're sparring, if you don't throw over 50% power, you're not going to get it there. And they're just going to step away. So for you to connect, you're going to have to throw 65, 70, 80% power. No one threw 100. No one was trying to kill each other.
Right.
But to get there, you just had to throw that much power.
Did it appear as if, and this is kind of an open hodgepodge, that if they would have went after each other the way they used to, we would have gone nowhere near 8 rounds? Or was the
depends on the rank.
Well, I'm thinking, were they trained? Were they in shape enough to have went full blast for 8 rounds? John, did you think so?
No.
Yeah. No, Dave?
No, I don't think so. They were 2 minute round. You could see Roy Jones was gassed a few times. Especially, I think in the second round, he was sitting on his stool and he looked really tired, you know, and it's like, okay, that's very revealing. And then Tyson said he was also feeling it a little bit. So no, you had to keep in perspective what this was. You know, that's what I was poo-pooing it on Max Boxing. I didn't even write anything about it. And then I actually watched it because I was curious, and I ended up writing something about it because I agree with Dave. I thought that's what I kept saying. Look, this is an exhibition fight.
Right.
This isn't the real. A lot of people thought this was really the real deal. No, this was and for what it was, you know, and I compared it to, it was in LA near Hollywood. It was very surreal, like you said too, Dave. It looked like a Hollywood production to me. You know, we were right by Hollywood, and it's like they took over. The set looked really good, you know. So I compared it to Rocky Balboa, if you guys remember that movie. Just because you got at least one older guy in that case, and he's fighting another guy, and people are ridiculing it and making fun of it, and it ends up being pretty good. So that's kind of how I saw it, and I agree with you, Dave, too. I thought they both looked pretty good, and you guys haven't said anything yet, but Tyson still has a little bit of that explosiveness that he had when he was younger, you know, and that, you know, he could do that out of that peekaboo, and it was kind of cool. And I guess he made 10 million, and the pay-per-view buys, I heard 2.2 million. So it's guaranteed that whatever Tyson wants to do, Holyfield called him out. I know, we'll get there.
Right.
If he wants it, but if it's Tyson, it's going to sell.
And Charles, so now we're looking at, okay, is this, I'm not going to get into the whole, is this the future of, but we're getting to the point where, no, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, okay, I've heard, speaking of Rocky Balboa, I heard of Antonio Tarver. I've heard a couple other guys that are like, hey, if they can do this, I can do that too. Now, is this kind of like, okay, let's listen to the perspective I see it as. Is this like the big 3 in basketball, Charles?
Perhaps, and that's okay. I can live with that. That's okay.
If that's the comparison, okay.
Right, but I've had some other friends that have said this is the future of boxing, putting that old Mayweather thing. He goes, the past, the present, and the future of boxing. And I'm like, you know what? It was entertaining. It was an exhibition. I'm glad to see nobody got hurt because I was really concerned about the state of mind of Mike Tyson and where he was physically. But he said he dropped almost like 100 pounds. So that, and then you add on to, for me, the performances, like the hip hop rappers and all the marijuana smoking. I was like, man, what the hell is this? And some of the bad rapping, and it was to me, it was almost like besides the boxing, it seemed as if, because Snoop Dogg was everything. Everybody loved Snoop and talked about him. I said, but considering the production, in my opinion, it really wasn't difficult to be the star of a bad show, right? So
kind of a parody, right?
Yeah. Right. It's like Snoop Dogg should be the best, but he came out.
Camp.
Yeah, he came out, did his thing, and you had guys out there, and I said, is this sponsored by a marijuana company or something? Based on weed. You had guys trying to smoke weed and then try to act like they were real cool. And one guy almost went into cardiac arrest on the stage. You know, weed. I was like, what the hell is this? Anyway, but the boxing, let's get back to the boxing.
Real boxing talk, Charles.
Not real. I'm sorry, but when you look at the boxing perspective, it could be the future in regards to how people are entertained. One thing I do like about it was we heard a conflict, which kind of bothered me at first, concerned me. Mike Tyson said he was going to be the old Mike Tyson. In his mind said he was telling you, yeah, I'm gonna come in and I don't play boxing and all that other stuff, and that's cool. But when you really watched it, you saw two older guys that were some of the best in their time, and they, if they could hurt one another, they would have. But then it was like Roy Jones purposely was like, I'm gonna stick away from here and I'm gonna throw
Yeah.
We'll make sure that you don't get me. And it was okay because they were doing the best they could at that age. And I was fine with that. And the other part about it I liked about it was when in the past, the media was notorious for trying to make Mike Tyson look like he was an idiot. That's just my opinion, right?
Right. You're right. Oh yeah.
The other night when he says like he was just a simpleton who was a great puncher. When he asked Roy Jones, were you afraid that you was gonna get hurt about Mike Tyson? And Tyson said, wait a minute, what the hell about me? Nobody asking about me. What about me being hurt? And that broke it for me. It's like Mike has in perspective. Mike realized this is an exhibition. I'll do it again because you want to see it again. But I know that time where you thought that I'm still thinking like I had to be the greatest and the baddest man on the planet, that's passed by. And that was refreshing to me because that means he's in a good place, health-wise. So I like that because we have seen so many boxers that have been just thrown away and you treat them like crap and a piece of crap. And Roy the same way. Roy was like, you know what? I didn't come in here to get hurt by Mike Tyson. You got entertained, people watched it. So Holyfield come back, as long as they don't bite, as long as he doesn't headbutt, he's all right with Tyson. But in regards to the future, we can see more exhibitions, and that's okay. That's what people want.
Okay, Dave, here's what I'm thinking. All right. Now, we've talked about, how much boxing you've watched before and you're getting into it now. And you went back and watched the Tyson fights and some Roy Jones Jr. fights, right? So is this something where if we were to continue these kind of things, you think it would get more people back into what we're looking at as far as boxing is concerned? If we were to pair an exhibition like this with, say, Mikey Garcia or somebody like that. What are you laughing about? But is this something where you'd say, I'll watch the exhibition if that's an undercard or on the undercard, there is a fight that I didn't know about, and I'll start pairing things together, and the marketing brain is working on Charles, or I can see it already. So,
well, I'll be honest with you. I watched it the next day because I'm too cheap to pay that. So I didn't get to see all the wonderful things that Charles was talking about. And I went, oh man, I missed some fun things. But yes, I would watch it because, I've watched boxing over time, but I just happen to have a different perspective now than I used to. But man, if you go back and do your research and see what those two guys did best, you can actually see. I would like to see somebody like Tommy Hearns, that awesome look in his face when he gets his bell rung. He goes, I'd love to see Tommy Hearns come out and fight if he's still around. Is he still around? Oh, golly. Yes, I'd watch that. Sorry, I rambled.
I'm sorry. It's the internet gremlins are back.
Okay.
The concept of saying we can combine what we just saw here and bring in the old heads and the curious and combine that with some of the fights we've been talking about that people need to see.
They did that a little bit in the 70s. I remember they brought Rocky Graziano and Tony Zale back to Madison Square Garden and had them have some at least a couple of exhibition fights. I can't remember what fights, but it was in 1972, 73. I remember it was really cool because, these are legends, but they didn't get in all kinds of shape and it wasn't all about them. They had t-shirts on and they went at it. It was obvious an exhibition, a lot less than this where, they were going half speed, but if one had hit the other one really hard, and Tyson always had a really good chin, so I don't think he was really worried about it, but Roy Jones has been knocked out 5 times. So there was that concern that something could happen to Roy. I'm just afraid off the top of my head that if they do this too much, it'll get old quickly. People will get tired of it, you know. And Tommy Hearns, I know from a friend of mine that Tommy Hearns did want to do something like this. And yeah, and my friend, well, I can say my friend Randy Shields, who fought Tommy Hearns, they had been discussing this. And it wasn't going to be in America; it was going to be somewhere else. But this was months ago. This was right when Tyson started talking about it, I think. And but you know, it's still the same thing. I do and I don't. I just think that Tyson will come back because of the money and the buys and all that. And he's wildly popular. I mean, when I was at Staples and saw him there and Holyfield was there, he gets the biggest cheer, as we've said. He was pretty much garbage there for a while, and he brought himself back, you know, and he's almost lovable now in a lot of ways. And Charles is right. I totally agree. That was the most frustrating thing about Tyson was they'd make him out to be kind of dumb. And, you know, Tyson knows a hell of a lot about boxing history. If you remember, he read about it, he watched tape, and that was part of the reason most of the reason he went into the ring like he did the entrance was because of Jack Dempsey. You know, and he used to wax poetic about Dempsey and Jack Johnson, and you'd go, So Regis Prograde does that. Yeah. So it's just, as long as they don't do it real quick, as long as they don't do it a lot, Frank, I think it'll be okay. But they could try it in a big fight, you know, put it underneath and see what kind of response it gets. But again, I'm afraid, just my opinion, that if they do it too much, people are going to go, ugh. I think this is kind of a Tyson Jones thing. I don't know how much. And Holyfield, like you said, the top three or whatever, because I can't think of any other heavyweights off the top of my head that people would be that interested. James Bone, Larry Holmes is like almost 70. He's not going to do anything. And so who else is there?
Right.
So.
Well, it reminds me, there is a movie with, and I'm blanking on Robert De Niro and, was it Stallone? I can't remember.
Oh, Grudge Match.
But it was
Grudge Match.
Yeah, Grudge Match. That's it. Yeah, right. And that was kind of that idea of, okay, let's get him out there, and without the grudge match part of it, let's get him out there, see what happens, you know, understanding what the rules are. But now
I don't know. I think so. I mean, I think boxing lost its way for a while. It was largely promoted back in the 80s, but I don't know. It's just the old names, and everybody that actually saw Mike Tyson fight at 20 years old and go, "Oh my God, I've never seen anyone hit that hard." I mean, I went back and watched that like Razor Ruddock fight, and Razor Ruddock, man, he hit just as hard as Tyson did. And I honestly, after looking at that and watching Razor Ruddock's fights after that, Tyson ruined that man. He'd never been hit that hard before, and I've been hit so hard in sparring that. My eyes turned off, and that was like, oh God. I ended up having to take it to the ground because I couldn't see the guy anymore. I mean, I ended up doing an arm bar and knocking him out that way, but that's another story altogether. But you're talking about the new versus the old. I mean, I watched Tyson Fury. Dude, a Tyson now could knock that guy out with a liver shot. I don't. But you know, a Tyson at 20, it'd knock him out in the first round. I don't think that the newer breed is. I mean, Klitschko was pretty damn powerful and nasty in his prime, but I mean, man, I've never seen anyone hit like Mike Tyson. I mean, never, and I've never been hit that hard either. I don't ever want to.
Yeah, I understand that. Frank, with us, man. But I mean, so I don't know, John. When you look at it that standpoint, though, I had to agree.
I'm here, but I don't know if I'm on the same page as you.
Okay, well, I'm gonna answer that question that you asked earlier. I think that that premise of taking the exhibition and combining it with present day fights would be. I'm with John. It would be cool for a minute, but it's an exhibition, and with all of the way that they went about it with the marijuana and 420 and all that, I mean, that's cool. And if you can make your money, I love Mike Tyson. You got a new way to do it. Let that be the vaudeville variety show, the circus it is. I'm not mad with that. If you want to see that, let's run that circuit. But when I want to see a real fight like this weekend, I'm coming to watch as an old school, old fogey, whatever you want to call it. I want to see the real deal, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. I think Spence Jr. and Garcia coming together are going to bring it. So I would prefer, maybe just me just being older, I prefer for them to remain separate. You want to bring something early on, you show it on regular TV, get it out the way so it doesn't really get in the way of the real boxing. I'm good with that. If Mike Tyson want to fight somebody, Holyfield 19 times, I'm good with that. Tommy Hearns, heaven forbid, I hope not, because of his health. He wants to get back into the Sugar Ray and they want to do something where they push each other around, have a grudge match, then play foosball afterwards. I mean, get your money, man. Get your money. I don't care how they do it, but I think they should keep it separate. And if you know Tyson's gonna make money anyway, you can do that. You don't need to be connected with the real boxing, in my opinion.
I agree.
Well, and we get to the point where we're starting to say, do we want to see Morales Barrera 27? You know, have we already proven what we need to prove, or are we looking at, well, he never got a chance to fight him, or his prime wasn't in his prime, so let's put him out there now when they're 60. You know, now we're starting to get a little carried away. So, all right, let's talk real boxing now, if that's what we call it, because I believe that's the name of the show, if I'm not mistaken, which I usually butcher 17,000 times, but I haven't done it in a while. Coming up this weekend, Errol Spence Jr. and Danny Garcia. Now, we can roll this around as many times as we want. I've looked at a few different things, and we'll throw some graphics up there because I'm sure my face is going to blop out here in a minute anyway. But undefeated Errol Spence Jr. And understanding what that means in that division. And then, as we talked about last week, Danny Garcia with only 2 losses against 2 of those guys that it's not a shame to have lost to.
Yeah, and razor thin losses, Frank, really close.
Razor thin losses, exactly right, exactly. So I think the question that we have to ask ourselves over everything, have we overhyped Errol Spence Jr.?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions going in. I think Errol Spence, I've thought for a few years, is the real deal. I do. I think he's really a good fighter. I've never had a doubt about that. I have a little bit of a doubt now, but only because, as we know what happened, we talked about it numerous times, but I don't think he'd be fighting if they weren't sure that he was 100% ready to go. And I think something maybe between the years, it took him a while. Right. Of course, after what happened to him, he seems to have an attitude like, look, I'm lucky to be here, and he should. If you've seen the video of that accident, he has no business being here, but he is, and he's got a second chance. So I think he'll be fine. I think it's going to be up to Danny to take it from him. And as we saw with Sean Porter against Errol, Sean just fought him. He just got in there and ripped with him, because when I remember I was watching the face-to-face and Errol Spence kept saying, I'm going to knock you out. And Sean Porter was like, you're going to knock me out? You're going to knock me out? Are you serious? I mean, he did knock him down, and he won the fight very close again. But I think he showed that there's a way to fight Errol. If you can get him to back up a little bit, maybe try to get off first. But then again, that's hard because Danny Garcia is a natural counterpuncher, as we know. And when he fought Granados from Chicago, he was aggressive. I wrote about this. And he came out and I was like, is that Danny Garcia? And he looked real good. So he's not going to do that because he's got too much respect for Errol Spence. But if he's in the middle there somewhere, and Errol isn't just quite right, I think, because I'd say naturally Errol's a better fighter. But if he's not there, if he's come down a little, and Danny has a great night, he can definitely win. But the edge goes to Errol Spence, of course.
Well, what we were talking about with the Crawford-Kell Brook fight, after Kell Brook had the facial surgery and whatnot, Charles, we're looking at a guy who's got some damage that hasn't been touched yet.
True.
Is there a point where you think that if he touches him up a little bit, the guy, Errol Spence says, whoa, I can't get hit in the face like this anymore. And does that change the whole tone, or is he healed? Well, as we were mentioning, how do you heal your face?
I'm not sure if you can heal your face. Okay. That it comes down to that point of Errol Spence training, believing in himself. I think he mentioned earlier in an interview that he tried to spar. He was a little nervous at first, but then he kind of got over it. So I think they've tested the waters for they feel comfortable enough that they can get in there. And does that mean he still cannot be hurt? Something bizarre can happen? It's boxing. Hell yes. We don't know. But as you said, I think John put it down so greatly, so sweetly that him surviving that crash without a seatbelt, mind you. He didn't have a seatbelt on. People don't know that. He didn't have a seatbelt on. And he survived the way that he did. And I think he's feeling like, hey, man, I got a second chance. I'm not afraid of anything. I'll fight. I'm used to it now. Let's get in there. So it could make a difference. But I'll say this, too, that we won't know until he gets into the ring. And Danny Garcia is a tough competitor. As you mentioned, 2 fights that he was this close to winning. One way or another, he could have done some things that made a difference. But here's the other thing I'm going to throw at you, though, is I'm interested to see, as you mentioned, how Danny Garcia approaches this fight. Because if you go back and you think about it, the 2 fights he lost against Keith Thurman, who's supposed to be known as a knockout puncher or whatever, and then the one with Porter, who's kind of coming forward all the time, both of them beat him based on their ability to box.
Right.
Notice when Sean Porter started boxing, you're like, what the hell why is he boxing? He doesn't box. He doesn't box. Right. But he saw something, so he would interchange the styles. And I think that, and we'll see, I think it depends on what happens and how the styles go. But I think I'm looking for Spence to go. I want to see how Danny comes. Is Danny coming for me real quick? Because if he's able to control it, start popping that jab, moving around, connecting with Danny, exchanging when he wants to, going in and out. The one thing that we know is when Danny gets behind in the last couple fights anyway, when he was fighting the two losses, he starts to get slower and he can't catch up with those guys.
Right.
He can't make that up. And I think that's going to be a major issue because it's ironic that if a guy like Sean Porter, who's known for going straight right at you, pulls back and says, yeah, I'm going to do that for a minute, but I'm also going to move around a little bit.
That's what he did.
You have a problem with that. And we know what Errol Spence Jr. can do with that. Yeah. I think it's going to be key to see, is Danny Garcia going to be that statue at times that he can be, or is he going to go forward and lay it on the line? Because if he does not, I think that, I'm not saying his time is up, but how many more shots you going to get at this? I mean, I know he had 2 great losses, but, is he somebody if he loses that is going to gather attention from a Crawford or some of the younger guys? So I think his approach to it is going to be very, very key, because if he falls behind, he has a hard time coming back. That's all I'm saying. And I think 2 losses was key, because we all I thought anyway, Thurman was going to just, one time, whatever. And he was like, nope, I'm up. I'm going to run from you and you can't catch me. Good luck. Have a good night.
Yeah, you're right, Charles. And that's because Danny's a natural counterpuncher. He's more cerebral in there. He takes his time, and sometimes he takes his time so much he drives his father nuts. If you watched his father, is bonkers anyway, but he's yelling at him, what are you doing? Why are you waiting so much? And that's just kind of the way he fights. But then when he fought Granados, he was aggressive and shocked everybody. And he said, this is the way I'm going to be from now on. And then he fought his next fight and he was the old Danny again, kind of waiting. And so you're like, I don't know. And that's a good point you made, because we don't know what Danny's going to show up. he'll be a little more aggressive. I don't think he's going to be too aggressive, especially in the beginning, because he's got respect for Errol Spence's punching power. But Danny Garcia has a very good chin, and he's got a good left hook. And I thought that was an interesting point you made, Frank, because who knows if Errol Spence gets cut, and that he goes back and he's like, God, I'm bleeding his teeth. If something weird happens, his nose gets broke. Who knows if that starts playing with him up here? Who knows? But Dan, yeah, you're right. I agree too, Charles. If Danny's got to think. See, Danny Garcia, what drives me nuts with him is, and I don't mean to be so critical because I couldn't last a second with him, is he doesn't fight with a real sense of urgency.
Right.
And that's what drives me crazy sometimes. And I would think that based on everything you just said, and I agree, that he better fight with a sense of urgency this time. He's 32. He's lost a couple of fights. If he loses again, you're right, Crawford might come calling. But they're just looking at him as a stepping stone then, especially how he loses. He loses a 12-round decision, a close fight. Probably get another shot at somebody. But this is it's an important fight for both guys, obviously. But for Danny to stay up there in the top 4, wherever he is like that, he's got to come in with an attitude of like, look, I'm like kind of a guy in a cliff right now, and I'm looking over the edge. And I gotta do it. I gotta, like when you watch football games and the team is in the huddle and there's 40 seconds to go and you're like, why are they taking their time? Come on, get up there, and hike it. What are you guys doing? Where's the urgency? So not to that degree, but I just think he's got to amp it up a little, be up the ante, as I like to say, just get it going, get the motor going a little faster, go after Errol Spence, test the waters a little bit, and then keep it up. It's an activity thing. Because he's like this.
Yeah.
So that it makes it's getting a lot of email information a lot, but like most in boxing, it's not getting much. Before I put 2 articles on Max Boxing just because I was like, this fight deserves more coverage. But I think it could turn out to be it. I think it'll be a good fight. I'll just say that. Whoever wants to jump in, looks like. You got an opinion on this one, Dave? Are you gonna watch it?
Before you guys even started the segments, I had never even heard of those 2 gentlemen before.
Okay.
However, while you were talking, I had a chance to actually do some analyzing, and it looks like you said, I think Errol Spence has superior footwork. He has a tendency to being left-handed, stepping outside the outside foot of the right-handed boxer, and he usually beats the right-handed boxer to the jab because he's stepping outside and punching over top. I don't know. It looks like Garcia likes to just be a statue.
He likes to wait. He likes to wait.
You're going to get your head knocked off. You want to do that against someone fast, and especially somebody that's a natural southpaw that wants to annoy you.
Errol Spence isn't that fast though, so that help. That'll help
Really?
a little bit.
His jab
fast.
is
pretty heavy-handed though. Pretty heavy-handed.
Yeah, but I think too, like you said though, it depends. To me, it depends on the caliber of the talent that he's facing. Because some people that are right at his level, so-called, or below him, Danny Garcia can destroy them, and he showed you that with his power. But then when he rises up in talent, sometimes in certain guys, they're more or less technicians. Because Danny sometimes goes like, no disrespect to him, but he kind of goes like at one speed. He fights.
You're right.
And you're like, okay, man. As John said, come on, Danny, show some urgency. Let's screaming at him. What the? Hey, what the? Bleep, 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 all this. But and that's just, and he's like, well, I'm doing all I can, and then he'll come back and tell you, I thought I did enough to win the fight, but when you watch the game, you're going, no, you didn't. So
right.
It's just to that point where now you're saying, and with Errol Spence Jr., the one thing we know is if he's okay and he's able to feel comfortable, sooner or later the switch is going to turn on, and he shows you that. He did it against Kell Brook, right?
Yeah.
did it against Porter. Porter was coming for him. And he's like, all right, flame on, Johnny, you know, Johnny, flame on, Fantastic Four.
Johnny Storm, yeah.
Johnny Storm. He turned that switch on like, quick, flame on.
See,
Okay,
Charles,
but
let me interject. Let me say something real quick. The interesting thing about Errol Spence, too, is when he fought Mikey Garcia, everybody thought he would go in there to just try to bomb out Mikey, but he just showed, hey, I can box.
Yeah.
You want me to box a little bit? I can box, too. He outboxed the boxer. So he's got more game than I think people remember. And so, yeah, he's a superior fighter, no doubt about it.
Okay, but we're looking at what should be distinctive styles here. So,
Yes.
Dave, you said something earlier that made sense. You got popped in the face and you couldn't see, you know, so you had to go to ground fighting. Well, you can't do that here. There are two ways of looking at this. If you're the guy that gets popped in the face and your face has been messed up, does that affect you to the point where even for just 5 seconds, you're out of sorts? Or if you're the guy that pops him in the face, who's used to being a counter puncher, and as we've said, a statue, which, you know, that's maybe a little harsh, but I understand what you're saying. Do you go at the guy or do you wait for him to do something? I mean, from your experience, what is that reaction? It's like, oh, crap, I can't see. Fight's over. I got to figure something out.
Getting hit really hard will make you do one of two things. Go in for a clinch in this situation or get out. And, you know, I'm not really much of a runner, so I can't get out. So my only option is to go in and hopefully get your brain right. But, you know, one of the things I just noticed about Errol Spence, his weight distribution on his feet, since he is a southpaw, what he'll do is rock his weight over to his left leg and put his right leg outside of the foot of the right-handed boxer. That way, when he feels that person about to move their shoulder, you know they're going to punch, and therefore all he has to do is distribute his weight back to the right, and he punches over top. So a smart boxer like De La Hoya, which knows that's going on, but I don't know. I've been watching the Sean Porter fight for both of them. I don't know. It's an interesting fight, but I don't know. It'll be an interesting contrast, like you said.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, Frank, when you look at it though, I mean, I hear all that, and I know that's the logistics of boxing, but Errol Spence Jr. has been in there, been boxing a long time. And I know this is different because it's an accident, but I'm sure somewhere in his boxing career, something happened that he didn't expect to happen. And I mean, granted, if it happens, there are things like that can happen. Something can happen where he's feeling like, oh my God, what happened? I'm feeling the remnants of the accident, but I think he's the type of guy that's gonna go out on the shield. That means he can't fight anymore. I think that is just a different thing where people just got to see what happens. But I don't think, and Danny Garcia said it, I think if Danny Garcia hurts him, I don't think he's gonna say, well, I'm not gonna hurt him because he was in an accident. It's like, I got an opportunity to win this damn fight. I got a lot riding on the fight. I've been waiting a long time. People have kind of underestimated me, put me down or whatever, and not giving me my just due. So I think he's gonna come all in, and I think Errol Spence is gonna go like, look, I'm out here, and if it doesn't work, I tried. I went out on my sword, and maybe it's not for me. I will find out. But I don't think it's going to be like, well, I'm not sure. It's going to be like, the only way he can find out if he's ready, if he's healed, if he ever will heal, is to get into the ring. You got to put it on the line. And I think that's what they both have trained for. That's what warriors do. And I think that's what's going to happen Saturday night. So one way or another, they're going for it. And you can talk about it afterwards. If he felt like something was going to happen, then don't get in the ring. It's happening unless heaven, hot water happens, something crazy. It's happening Saturday. And I think that's something we need to really keep in mind. This fight is happening, and no takebacks or, well, I don't feel like doing it right now because I'm not sure now. Nah.
Yeah, no, you know what? I agree. If he felt like that, he shouldn't be fighting. If he had those doubts, so I think he's going to be all in, balls to the wall. You know, he's going to be going just like he always has. He's not going to be thinking about that accident. I would be surprised, and maybe if he's got a cut, it hurts a little bit. It might click, but the guy is a fighter. He's been a fighter all his life. He will get his senses together and do what he feels like he's got to do to win. So no, and then maybe later might reflect a little on it, but yeah, I think he's all in. He better be, because he's facing a guy who's a good fighter himself. So yeah, I expect him to be the Errol Spence that we're used to seeing, and doing his heavy punching and working off the southpaw stance, like Dave was saying, and doing his thing, because he does it very effectively. You said if he was in a tough spot. I remember in the amateurs he got wobbled, so that made people wonder about his chin. And as a pro, I don't know if he's ever really been hurt, Charles. I think he might have been stunned a couple of times, but that would be interesting if Danny catches him with that left hook. Danny Garcia's only got 19 knockouts, so he's not. While Spence has had less fights, he's got more knockouts. Now that doesn't necessarily always mean anything, but in this case, I think it does. Spence is much more heavy-handed. So if Garcia manages to hurt Errol Spence, something that he hasn't had happen to him in a long time, that would be interesting.
Oh, for sure.
And, then you see how a guy reacts to that. We were watching the heavyweights. I was David Dubois and dang it, slipped my brain, the old brain. But David Dubois was in a place where he had never been. He said the big guy said he was going to take him to deep water, and he did. Mm-hmm. And you could see he was almost in a sense panicking, because he didn't know what to do, and he only had 15 fights coming in. So I don't think Errol Spence is going to be surprised by anything that Danny brings in there. I think he's ready to go. Like I said, he's like an investment of a bunch of financiers. They're not going to put him in there unless they're sure that he's ready to go. And Errol Spence is the same way. I'm not going to fight anybody like this. He didn't even have a tune-up fight. I'm not going to fight this guy unless I'm 100% ready to go, and I think he is.
Yeah. Did he have any head trauma from that accident?
Not that we know of.
No, he got all his teeth knocked out, and he had his face was all messed up, but never heard anything about any head trauma. That's very good point there, David. But no, I don't. You never read anything either, Charles, about any.
Yeah. And he's been sparring. No, he's been sparring as well. So like he said, he's taking punches. But like you said, Dave, as a fighter, we don't know. We don't know until you get in there. He has been sparring. He did say early on he was a little apprehensive when he first got in there, a little gunshot, because he hadn't been hit in a while. But he said once I got hit, it was like, all right, I'm back in here. The fighter instincts came up, and we don't know. Let's be real. I mean, we say this now, right? Oh yeah.
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't know, but until he gets in there and he takes those punches and he's in deep waters or wherever it may be, we don't know. And I don't think you're ever going to hear Errol Spence Jr. talk about, use that as an excuse as to why he may have lost.
No, he wouldn't.
The only reason I say that is because if you have some sort of head trauma, like a concussion, then have another brain shake right after, you tend to go down sooner and sooner and sooner every time you get hit.
Yes.
So I just don't know. I mean, if he hadn't been knocked down, then he might be all right. I mean, really. I mean, the face trauma is one thing, but the brain, that's scary.
Let me throw this into you though, and I'm gonna keep this 100. I mean, I think that's a very serious thing to be concerned with, right? And as a fighter, you know what it's like because you've been in there. So definitely. But I will say this, and we know this about boxing, John. Boxing for years, I'm sure, that people get in the ring that have been hurt and didn't belong in the ring went too long. Don't let me get me started on my Muhammad Ali soapbox. I'm serious. Because I'm just saying, we know that. So all I'm saying is, it's not like they're really going to be too much concerned. I think if it was really a major problem, his people would say no. But we know boxing has at times been unscrupulous as to letting people go on for money. So I hope he's okay. I think he's going to get in there, like we said, do the best you can. But I agree with you. And I like your perspective because as a fighter and as a boxer, you have the fighter's perspective in mind. And I think that's great. But on the other hand, oftentimes in boxing and the promotions, and all they care about is how many people will watch, how much money do they make, and how big is a fight is going to be, unfortunately.
Yeah. That's sad, but it's true.
It
Very
is.
true.
It's sad.
Very
Commodity.
true.
Non-human. It's a commodity.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Very true. Unfortunately, and it's still that way, as you could tell, because a lot of times all they talk about is numbers. They don't talk about these guys as human beings. They don't even throw anything in there until maybe later somebody says, "Hey, isn't this guy your fighter?" Oh yeah. He's fine. And that's always been a real bad part about boxing. Not only Muhammad Ali, but a lot of guys, they just throw them in and they're just a piece of meat, and that's always, yeah, I know what you mean, Charles. That's always been, talk about being taken advantage of. I mean, it's a tragedy. There's been so much of that, and they get shortchanged. They don't get the money they're promised. And they don't feel like they should have to count every penny, and they shouldn't. I would think that you would be able to trust a few people as a fighter, but it isn't like that. You need one person like Sugar Ray Leonard did it. He had that attorney, Mike somebody, and he trusted him to watch his money and take care of his money, and he did. But most of the time, people don't think that far ahead. They don't think, because you would think, well, I got these guys that have known me since I was a kid. I can trust them, but it doesn't work that way.
You know that fame affects people differently. Let's be real. You get something, you're like, all right, I'm gonna hold on to this and that. Somebody gets a little taste of fame, start talking to other people, they act differently. And that's why I said it was refreshing to hear what Mike Tyson said. He has it in real perspective. Yeah, it appears as if he has a good group around him. His wife is, she's second to none, making sure that he's taken care of in regards to his commodity, of him being a commodity, his brand. She's like, when they first got married, he made sure they had a place to live. They bought a house so that no matter what happens, they always have a place to live and something like that. And then the whole thing with the marijuana, avenue that they're running forward towards, it's just great branding. And now for him to say it's an exhibition, it's like saying, hey man, I'm just out here trying to make this money. I'm trying to live life the way I want to, but I'm no longer that guy you think I am. I'm not doing it for the wrong reasons. And I understand the game because people have turned me on to it, and he's in a better place. And I just wish we could have more boxers and more fighters that would have people behind them do the same thing for them, because a lot of them, they have nothing else but boxing. They know nothing else to do, and they have no other way to make a living. When it's all taken away from them, then what?
That whole Robin Givens thing was the biggest mistake.
Yeah.
But, I'm a big Mike Tyson fan. He's really, if you watched his fights pre-prison, after the fight, he was gracious. He would help the other boxer up if he knocked him down. He's really a good-hearted person that just got caught up in some random shit. And, just like all of us, our lives sometimes goes way over there. And we do stupid things when we're younger. But, I'm a big fan of his because I've been watching all of the Mike Tyson mystery cartoons, and I'm just having a blast with them. I'm laughing my ass off. So I don't know. I'm glad he's got his life straightened around. He's still an interesting character because I've never quite seen a human do what he can do. And even at 54, I remember back when George Foreman fought that his title fight, and I watched that. I'm going, oh my God, this guy. But then again, I've never seen anyone throw a straight jab that hard before. If that big hand this big comes in your face, it hurts. So never stand in front of George Foreman. That's what I learned from that fight. But anyway, You are correct. I like your assessments of Mike Tyson.
But you know what? The one thing is, it can show you how if you have the right people, it can be great. But then it also can show you being around the wrong people can just be horrible. I remember watching a fight with Mike Tyson, and he had his fellas in there, and they were supposed to be in his corner, and his eye started to swell, right? And you're looking at the eye. And I don't give a daggone if you only watch boxing for 2 minutes. You watch HBO, ESPN. If the guy's eye starts to swell, it's a thing called ear swell. And you press the metal piece up against it to put it down so you take the swelling down. But when you see in the corner that they grab an ice bag and put it on the man's face, you know he's in some serious trouble. In a heavyweight $1 million fight, you grab an ice bag and put it on his eye.
It was a rubber glove.
I mean, whatever the hell
it was filled up it looked like a balloon.
Yeah.
It was.
I'm giving him a break. I'm calling it an ice bag, whatever the hell it was. It wasn't his. Oh man, this is horrible.
Right.
It was bad, man.
That's true. That was terrible.
That was scary.
Who was he fighting in that fight?
I don't know. I said, where's the Iswell? How the hell you come to the ring in $1 million fight without Iswell? You could have borrowed one.
Was that the Holyfield fight? I can't quite remember. I think it was a pretty important one because we've all seen it, but they got this big thing. So it looks like a big balloon and they're pushing it down on his eye. And it's like, boy, we were prepared. So I don't know. It might have been the Douglas. I don't think it was the Douglas fight, but then again, it might have been because nobody expected Douglas to win. So least of all them. So I don't know. I have to go back and find out now, Charles.
I mean, that's when, what was it, 10 days after Buster Douglas's mother passed away? He didn't care.
Oh, yeah. He was motivated.
Charles, me, and Frank all worked with Lambert. What was his first name?
Steve.
Anyway, he grew up with Buster Douglas and said he was just a mean playground thug that would take all your lunch money from you every day.
Really?
So, so it was pretty interesting. It's like, wow, you actually knew this guy. He said, yeah, he's a bad dude. So I ended up watching that fight with my grandmother. And that was a first pay-per-view I think we've ever paid for.
It was a good one.
I was shocked.
Memorable. Yeah.
I mean, it just took a guy with a big, nasty jab that could actually connect. No one else could connect. And, how many fights did Buster Douglas win after they lost his next one?
Yeah, but he had no fear, though. See, that's what you feel hit right on the head. He lost his mom, and it's like, I lost my mother. What else really can happen to me? So if he was to lose to Mike Tyson is what it was. But I think that's the other part too. No disrespect to what Tyson did, but I think there was a fear factor for a lot of people in that. But I think too that Buster Douglas, as we said before, John, that Buster actually created the blueprint for how to start, take down Mike Tyson. Because other than that, people would have had no clue. And I think he started the way. Even somebody reminded me he did fight Razor Ruddock after that. Tyson did a couple.
He did a couple of times. Yeah.
But still, I think Buster was the guy that kind of set the tone to kind of show you don't have to be so afraid. You can bang with this guy. He's not as big as you may think. And Holyfield definitely, when he started using the old Bobo Brazil Atlanta Coco, but that you hit him a couple times in the forehead.
Bobo Brazil. Very good, Charles.
I'm just saying, it's when you use that, and you might be able to stop Tyson, because they said Holyfield's head was solid as steel, man. His forehead.
Yeah,
and he was tired of being headbutted. He said he got headbutted in the first fight, and he was done with that. Nope, no more of that.
That's another thing. When you're fighting a short guy like Tyson, you really got to be careful, because that forehead into a cheekbone is just a slight bump, and it feels like you got hit by a truck. It sucks. I ended up having to wear a lot more face gear just because not many people in my dojo were my height. So I'm getting freaking headbutted all the time. So yeah, that hurts. And Tyson threw a lot of elbows too, which is dirty, but I like
So
it.
did Holyfield.
Yeah,
Holyfield is he's such a good technical boxer.
yeah, but can we
I
be
mean,
real about the
and
other
he was
part too?
actually small. So I mean,
The other part too is they made so much of a big deal, of course, of Tyson biting his ear. Nobody talked about the fact that Holyfield had bit someone's ear when he was in the amateur. Nobody talks.
oh,
Yes, sir.
I didn't even know that existed.
He did.
Yes, sir.
He did.
Talks about that.
Holyfield did it too.
Yes, he did.
Yep.
So, it's interesting how we select what information we want to share. But, and notice, even though Holyfield said he bit my ear, afterwards, down the line, it was like, that son of a, he was like,
He played it up more.
yeah. You could just tell he was like, okay. But it was a different thing. So he really wasn't as pissed off as that you thought he would be, because he did it before. So it's like, I didn't expect it, but I understand.
Yeah, and I tell you what, I do remember that fight. That I was shocked, but I think Tyson was definitely down on the end of his career, and you just to create the torque that he does in such a short motion. There's just too much wear and tear on your body over a period of time. That you have to have such a great core to be able to throw a punch like that. And the one thing that a lot of people don't know is there's a reason why a lot of bodybuilders can't throw punches, because their tricep is always fighting their bicep and they're always flexed. If Tyson was able to, from here, just on off energy and just let the velocity do all the punching, and he could recover because he was so short and come back and hit the other side faster than anyone I've ever seen. I mean, especially at heavyweight. So I'm sorry, I get geeked out on reciprocating energy.
That's okay. It's a different side that we don't ever talk about, Dave. So it's interesting. Yeah, see, I'm always going to think that if Tyson hadn't had the falling out with Kevin Rooney and Bill Clayton, and then Jimmy Jacobs hadn't died, if all that hadn't happened and he got with Don King and he got these goofballs in his corner and all this kind of stuff, I think he would have, I don't know if he would have beat Douglas though, because Douglas had that style that because Tyson didn't train very hard for that fight. That's a fact. But Douglas had the height. He had that jab you were talking about, Dave. That was just, man, he couldn't miss Tyson. And that was pulverizing what he was doing. I still think Tyson would have did better. And then, of course, you got to remember he went to jail for a number of years. So when he came back, he wasn't the same guy. There's no way he wasn't the same guy. There and his abilities, his talents, they weren't the same. So it's too bad in a way if you think about it that happened to him, because we saw a really dynamic guy for a few years, and then after that, when everything started to go bad, it was just. You're just always going to wonder. It's like Muhammad Ali, that 3 years that he lost due to the war. What would he have done? He was looking like he was totally in his prime then. You remember, he's 25 years old in 1967. 25 to 1970, 25 to 28, roughly. I'm always going to say that if he had fought Joe Frazier in 1968 or 69 and he had been active more and everything, he'd have beat him.
Oh, yeah.
That's I always felt about it.
Yeah, but I think part of it, like you said, the whole Tyson thing, 5 years in jail, whatever it was, really took away from him.
3 years, yeah.
But I agree with Ali, even though Ali being out 3 years, as you said, if he would have fought back and see Frazier, it would have been one thing. But one thing about Ali that I love, John, even though we kind of looked at how horrible it was that whatever happened with 3 years he lost, to me, it made the story even better.
Oh, yeah.
Because once he came back, it was like yeah, and you said I wasn't gonna be able to do this. You took this from me, but even when I still think about the George Foreman fight. Nobody, not even his corner, believed that was a good fight for him to take.
Oh yeah, he was an icon.
It was,
I didn't.
it was amazing.
I mean, even going into that, I mean, obviously I wasn't around much back then, but the three contrasting styles with Ali being able to move laterally and use that jab, where you have your Joe Frazier that I don't care where you are, I'm going to track you down and wail on you. Then Foreman, which I'm going to track you down and you don't want to wail on me because I hit harder than you. So I would never have picked Ali to beat Foreman. I wouldn't want to get in the ring against that man. I mean, I think his boxing skills weren't near as good, but the greatest thing about Foreman is his arms were so big, you couldn't hit him. He'd just cover up.
It was amazing. Literally last night, I never saw this fight, and I watched it last night. I watched Norton Ali won, right?
Okay.
And then I went and watched Norton versus Foreman.
Ugh.
Wow.
Blasted him out of there, didn't he?
Oh man. And I said to myself, I didn't really have appreciation for George Foreman, but watching him destroy Norton and destroy Joe Frazier, even though you didn't beat Ali, it took my respect of him to the highest of levels. And it also took to the highest levels what Ali was able to do.
Yeah.
And I think I think Foreman was in a bad place when he fought Ali. So, I mean, later on in life, when he got his life straightened out and he just became a good human being, I mean, he actually was fun to watch. Even at 40-something years old, I was like, I love this guy. It gave me hope being a big guy, even though I can't hit half as hard.
Yeah, he'd walk right out there with the cheeseburgers and say, yeah, so a lot of people were like, and it was amazing because he was a Sonny Liston guy in a lot of ways. He loved Sonny Liston, and he almost emulated Sonny Liston with the glaring and the way he was destroying people, and he wouldn't talk. But yeah, you talk about recreating yourself, Dave, when you come back at 40-something years old, and everybody was pulling for him. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah, but like you said, you saw where Ali kind of set down the blueprint. And when he looked back at it, he's like, this guy is really nice. People like him. He smiles. I'm angry. Nobody wants to be bothered with me. Now, when I come back and smile and reinvent myself, I sell grills. I sell sports. I sell books. I sell everything. and I'm happy to be here. So to see him go through that metamorphosis, if you will, it was amazing because
it was.
George Foreman's a happy man right now. He's a very content and happy dude.
Happy rich man for sure.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites. He seems to be like a guy I would love to have a beer with, even though I'd love to have a beer with Tyson too. I'd actually probably like to smoke one with Tyson. But
yeah, it would be more that. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't see Tyson wanting to drink a beer with you. Tyson.
Yes. Yeah, he'd look at it and then he'd say, but I got, okay. Oh, yeah. I'll meet you over there. Sure, no problem.
Can I play with the birds? Can I pet a pigeon? I've never seen a pigeon.
I know Frank's been trying to get it out, but perhaps we should go and do our last little roll call, John, and
okay,
want to wrap it up. So, John, you want to give us an idea, let people know where they can reach you and what you got going on at this moment?
Oh, sure. I'm over on maxboxing.com, www.maxboxing.com. I'm the editor and lead writer and all that crap. And we got a lot of stuff always going on and a lot of fun stuff. And then, of course, I got the 3 books I always got to mention, Intimate Warfare and Blood on My Notebook and a few more rounds. They're all available on Amazon. They're all doing well. And as I always say, they're my babies. So obviously I'm thrilled. So, and then, of course, doing this show is always great, even with the internet gremlins and Frank having these issues and all this. And not his fault, it's just the internet. It's always a blast, right, Charles?
No doubt it is. Dave, give us a little background of what you got going on as our, I guess, our resident martial arts / fighter.
My teacher, his teacher's teacher was Bruce Lee's training partner. So
Wow.
there's that. But Bruce Lee was 5'3" and I'm 6'4". We have nothing in common. So anyway, I'm just a normal everyday guy that has a little bit different perspective, and I'm just thoroughly happy that you let me sit in today. I truly am.
We enjoyed it. It was very interesting.
Yeah,
well, thank you for coming.
I didn't want you to be here at all.
Wow, he comes out of nowhere and gives us. He's been stalking us the whole time, guys. He's just waiting.
The voice from the side, yeah.
He's another counterpuncher, Charles. It fits the theme.
Yeah, especially for this
waiting. He's been waiting. So what about you, Charles? Tell us everything about what you're doing.
Yeah, right now, the reality of sports, as you can see, finally got the green screen right, John. Finally.
I see it. It looks real good.
Thank you. So realitysports.com, doing some things there. Also doing some stuff with the Goon Squad Sports Radio Show. Great guys there. Just trying to be in the mix of everything. Trying to be like John one day, grow up and be an author. Trying to but
you're getting there.
Definitely enjoyed coming on here on the show with the irrepressible Franklin Gordon.
Invisible Man.
The Invisible Man, aka Darth Vader. So appreciate being able to come on and share some time talking a little bit about boxing.